each of you was talking about multidisciplinarity and sort of intersections. I'm just curious, when was the moment in your lives where you realized, oh, it's not only going to be one discipline, it's not only going to be one group of people, I actually have to reach out with either new groups, either, you know, representatives of new disciplines. And what was actually your approach? Because you suddenly realized, oh, I have to get out of my comfort zone. So what's the first thing that you do? I'm not going to call it was to start, and it would be lovely if each of you give us the answer. Okay, I'll be super quick. It was when I was in the Philippines, working with the first company, which was making products with leather. I realized it was like a flash. I went to see companies and I realized that it was such a shock. I didn't have any countries, so there's no countries in any different stages of my life. And then I said to the person in the I said, look, I don't want to work with that anymore. I have checked on my research, I think for amazing country, still got skills in the country, you've got which I would like for to learn more. You should really use that. And this thing is actually go ahead. And I thought, look, I don't know anything about material fibers, just go ahead. And that was really my passport to say, okay, do it. Then I started to work with people I couldn't even understand their language, like, you know, Uyghurs, and I would go and follow places of this country, dyers, farmers, scientists, graphic designers, photographers, walking through the place, and that really was like, okay, we're all together. This is it. This is how I have to work. So that was really important.
So the question, I think probably this is about realizing how much something needs to change. Me, it was walking into the glass house and realizing that there were alternative ways of growing food, despite the fact that I had a whole education. Actually talking to somebody who understood how to grow crops in a different way. And then thinking about, golly, actually, I don't get to change this thing. And realizing that this was one big project. Well, we're going to
there have been many moments that keep happening. You can do a lot by yourself and you can learn new skills, but actually, especially right now, actually, I'm at the point where I actually don't want to do this myself. I mean, I would love to be collaborating with other people. But one of the biggest moments of my life was the first lecture that I went to at university doing social anthropology. And we covered like 10 tribes. But I was silent afterwards. I just felt like there are other ways of living, and I need to learn. And it was just that moment of, wow, the way that I've been brought up is not the only way that people live. And that was a huge, really, really big moment. And actually, that also comes with the respect and curious about other ways of living and working with one another.
Thanks. Darshil?
Yep, likewise, it has been at many different moments, but it's primarily been when I've started new projects or new jobs, for instance. So for instance, when I first started my PhD, because I studied mechanical engineering with maths, and I first started working with these plant fibers, I didn't know what they were composed of. And we were trying to make completely bio-based resins from a seed oil from Ethiopia, which I didn't know anything about, and I had to learn what its molecular structure was. And as an engineer, I had to learn all the chemistry around it. So that's mostly a physical sciences and synthesizing of new materials through it. And then when I joined Cambridge, for example, I'm in the School of Arts and Humanities in the architecture department. So understanding the importance of the perspectives of people, trying to communicate how they will be using these misconceptions and misinformation being so critical to changing behaviors. I think that became particularly important, and communicating why this innovation is important to politicians and for changing policy. I think, again, that made me realize, and every day I realize that I can't do it alone. It is a team of us that needs to be there, because really no one can do it alone.
Exactly. That is why we have the network. Any questions for any specific speaker, Gassan?
It's not a question, it's just some brainstorming. I'm not a biochemist or anything to do with my design, but the ideas that I heard today was Iris kindly invited me to intersections, biodesign, art and science. I've come across those many, many years ago, and then the whole concept became more obvious when I was serving as professor of future foresight, Rochester Institute of Technology, 3-4 years ago. When we actually started focusing so much on developing scenarios and looking at what the future might look in terms of different inputs that we can put into those scenarios. And that was at the beginning of the COVID crisis. And then with my background, I have an MBA and a PhD in decision support with more technology. So we have arts and science mixed. In addition to working with the industry, working with the NGOs, working with international organizations, I found that building scenarios for the future, looking at what might happen in the future, is really important for the advancement of those industries. And I was thinking in my head is that I haven't come across anything to do with bio design, integration of arts and science in this field. It's a very interesting field. And perhaps some of those scientists who are working in this field can try and use this scenario planning methodology to develop future outlooks for the field of studies. For instance, if I did all my studies in business and then I did something in IT, I can say I am a little bit of a generalist and maybe specialist. And I would say that happened almost 30 years ago. You know? So now we're coming up with this concept, and I like it. I wrote it in my diary to see who is doing it and who is actually advancing this concept at university level, at school level, so that people can benefit from such experts. That's why I thought maybe I share with you this idea of future foresight using scenario planning in the field of biodesign. Thank you.
Can I just tell you that? Can I just tell you that the OECD did a future, I was part of it, a future forecast for the bioeconomy in 2015 or something like that. I was one, but everybody just looks at one. So they were only looking at the economic side. What we're trying to say is, because there are scenarios, and like the OECD does it, but they only do it from an economic point of view. And then the scientists do it from a science point, you know, where will we be in 10 years time? I don't know, like Lilia and Brenda and Agnieszka, we used to say, you know, how many innovations, how many products will we have in 10 years time? What we're trying to say with intersectionality is that when is everybody going to be on the same page? When are we all going to be moving in the same? Right, I don't want to take over. Thanks, Gasando. That's interesting. Any questions? Yes, Lauren first and then Ram. 4 minutes.
The first thing is to do your research before reaching out, I would say, to someone. When we were, artists, designers, approaching scientists, we were told, like, the most frustrating thing would be to just to reach out just because you're like, oh, because I'm a little bit interested. It's like, no, do your research, know what they're doing, know what they're about, know why you're contacting them specifically, because there are probably a lot of people who do similar things. Yeah, and because that's also part of respect.
Thanks. I just want to say that Carmen's got an appointment in 3 minutes. So if you have a question for Carmen, can you say it now so that she can leave in 3 minutes? Anybody question? Ram?
For all of you, firstly, I want to congratulate you on a fantastic morning of talks. What I wanted to say is, I think we're at a specific moment that this moment needs to be recorded, in the sense that not just in an exhibition space, but for permanently for museum collections. So my question is, biodesign and science integrated arts have made their way into the exhibition space, but not been applied permanently for museum collections. Why does the panel think this is? Like, for example, Darshil with the Bioladies project, looking at these materials from centuries ago, that they're available now in museum collections, whereas Pinatex and the materials that you're making, and the art that you're making, it should be in these permanent collections. Why do you think these museums are not taking them on?
Wow, what a question. Darshil, have you got a view? You've got connection with museums. They give you bits of ancient linen.
Yes, it's interesting though, because none of the samples we get are actually on show. It's in archives that they have. So I think part of the issue is storage maybe and archiving. They don't have a lot of data on where the materials come from. So we have to do our own digging, looking at other resources as well. And actually, for example, the museum collection problem is very interesting. The Louvre collection has had to be moved from Paris because of flooding in the Seine River, for example. And similarly, architectural collections that RIBA, ARB have, they don't have any space for it. So they're asking Cambridge if we have any sites. So maybe it might be to do with storage and what data is available on it.
Thanks, Darshil. Can I just say, it is 12:30. Can we just say thanks to all the speakers?